So the second piece of class activity for the first week is this. Think of an organisation that you're familiar with. It could be somewhere that you've worked, it could be a university, it could be a group that you've been part of, or somewhere where somebody you know has worked. What do you think are its corporate objectives? And the word corporate has been put in commas there because not every organisation actually says these are our corporate objectives. But if you drill down, if you think of what business or what industry an organisation is in, then the chances are that you can work out what their corporate objectives might be. There are many different ways of assessing the effectiveness of an organisation, and often that depends on the sector in which that organisation operates. But here's one way of thinking about how we might assess the effectiveness of an organisation from Torrington. First of all, at the very top, how does that organisation foster a positive corporate reputation? Do they foster a positive corporate reputation? Does it matter to them? How do they go about doing it? Moving around in a clockwise fashion, do they maintain a strong reputation for sound financial management and attracting investment? Think of organisations like Tesco, think of organisations like Morrison's. The supermarket sector has been in the press significantly over the last couple of years. What have we read about those organisations in terms of their financial management and their investment? How does that organisation meet its targets? What are those targets in terms of profit, in terms of sales, in terms of quality? Because of course not every organisation is a profit-making organisation. But what are the targets and how do they seek to go about meeting them? How does that organisation seek to maintain a positive reputation in the media? Very important, not just in the old-fashioned print media or in the television channels, but also in social media as well. What do they do out there that has an impact on their reputation? Do they have a reputation? Has anybody heard of them? Again, important. And how, and this is extremely significant and something that is a key theme of our course, is how do they demonstrate corporate ethics and social responsibility? And that doesn't just include towards the people within the organisation, but also to the wider community under which they are involved or in which they have influence. So how do they demonstrate corporate ethics and social responsibility? So some key dimensions of organisational effectiveness, and something to think about. If those are key dimensions of organisational effectiveness, where does human resource management or human resource development, which is about the learning and development side of HR, where do they all come in to those key areas of organisational effectiveness? How can HR intervention or learning and development intervention affect improvements in those key dimensions?
A revised business partner model was published in 2005 with David Ulrich and a new collaborator, Wayne Brockbank. And it does look very similar to the original module. So you've still got the strategic partner with that future focus, with that thinking about what the organisation's long-term objectives are going to be and the strategies that are needed to be in place to achieve those objectives, being very customer focused, thinking about the HR requirements in terms of fulfilling those objectives. You've still got that change agents, recognising the type of change that needs to be initiated, driving through the people management side of change, helping other people within the organisation to drive through that change, in particular line managers, so enabling them to be change agents through learning and development opportunities, for example. But if you look at the bottom half of the model, which is the more sort of operational, day-to-day, tactical side of the model, you've got a couple of little changes. So you've got the admin expert also now becomes a functional expert. So in addition to being able to maintain the role of HR day-to-day record keeper, HR day-to-day go-to person for advice, the admin expert is also expected to be a functional expert in terms of the human resource management function within the organisation and the expertise that are expected to have. And it may well be that if they're in a role where in a larger organisation where HR is actually sort of worked out in a department by department basis, they may even have to have expertise in the function that they're covering. So, for example, if they're looking after HR for a finance team or a marketing team, they may have to know a little bit about their job as well. And then on the other side of that day-to-day operational focus on the model, we've got the employee advocate stroke champion. So we've still got the employee champion, but that word advocate means something slightly different, arguably it's a little bit more managerialist than the word champion per se, because the word champion indicates that you're on the side of the employees all the time, and I think the word advocate means that you are there to listen to the needs of the employees and to do the best you possibly can to help maintain an engaged workforce, and to meet the needs of those employees on a day-to-day basis. But the role also is to make it clear to employees the expectations of the organisation, the needs of the organisation, what this organisation is trying to do on a day-to-day basis, and what this organisation is maybe trying to do in the future as well. Make them aware of the difficulties that the organisation is working under as well. So there's a slight sort of difference in emphasis, if you like, from straightforward champion to employee advocate and champion.
Another model that you might like to read about with respect to the HR professional or the HR practitioner is Grossman's competencies of high-performing HR professionals. The idea of competencies is something that we'll look at a lot on this module, and what Grossman is saying is that at the very, very bottom of this triangle here, the most basic responsibilities of the HR practitioner are to be a business ally, to have a deep knowledge of the business itself, the products, the services, the customers, and to be concerned with core HR day-to-day activities. So that's the operational stuff, the operational responsibilities of the HR practitioner. Moving up this little triangle here, we then start thinking about what he calls the strategy architect. So this is a much more of a strategic role. It's more the strategic partner kind of thing, thinking about the world that the organisation is in now, but also seeking to help anticipate the world that organisation is moving into, looking at key business trends, looking at key business developments, identifying those opportunities that might be exploited, and also being aware of the threats that might actually impinge on the progress of that organisation. And once one is a strategy architect, then one also has to be a talent manager, because as a strategy architect, you're thinking about the future, the potential opportunities and threats. As a talent manager, we need to ensure that we have a workforce in place that will help us exploit those opportunities and fight off those threats. And finally, as a cultural steward, it's about ensuring that we have the right culture on board, that we'll be able to deal with ongoing change at a significant level, often at short notice, and that we'll be able to achieve an engaged workforce and maintain an engaged workforce through what can be very, very difficult times. And finally, at the top of the pyramid, we've got what we call the credible activist. So the credible activist delivers results. The credible activist delivers results within the organisation at all levels. So at operational level and also at strategic level. So the credible activist is somebody who is respected by everybody within the organisation, by ordinary people who are working within the organisation in different functions, by managers of different functions, by HR practitioners at all level, and by the executive of the organisation as well, delivering results with integrity, sharing information, very important, and building trust. So do read up a little bit more about this model, the competencies of high-performing HR professionals. In 2016, Ulrich published his HR competency model. Already mentioned that competencies are extremely important on this module. So please check out the video in the additional topic materials area that explains this particular model. And it's interesting to note that Ulrich has also used the term credible activist, which Grossman used a few years earlier on his previous model. But have a look at the video and that will explain this particular model of HR. Your second homework task for week 1 asks you to consider the Ulrich and Brockbank revised HR business partner model. And to what extent do you think it applies to an organisation that you're familiar with? It can be somewhere that you work or that you've worked in the past. It can be somewhere where you've been a student. It can be an association that you've been involved in, or somewhere where you've been a volunteer. Please write up your findings in a maximum of 500 words and again upload them in the weekly homework area on My Beckett. The deadline for this second task is 9 o'clock on Monday the 7th of February. The first week is unusual in that we've asked you to do 2 homework tasks. Normally there is 1 homework task every week. So directed independent work for session number 1 is, first of all, can you read the module handbook? There's some important information in there. There is more detail about all of the topics and how the topics meet the learning outcomes, not just of the university, but also of the CIPD. Also, please can you either download, borrow or buy a HR textbook, a general HR textbook from the reading list, and read the introductory chapters. Now, if you do decide to buy a textbook, you don't have to buy the most recent edition of the textbook. There are plenty of older editions of all the textbooks available on online providers such as Amazon or eBay, and it doesn't matter if it's a tatty old copy. The idea is that you just are requiring some basic information about the origins of HR and HR as a discipline. Can you also please download and read the assessment case study Global League for Equine Welfare, and draft an essay plan and a response to the following question. And the question is, if your application to be Director of Human Resource Management for the Global League for Equine Welfare is successful, how might your knowledge and understanding of human resource management help you approach the role? Now, the reason that you've been asked to draft that essay plan now is because that actually is your piece of homework for week number 2. For your preparation for week 2, please can you read a chapter on leadership and management from an organisational behaviour ebook that you can access via the reading list on the My Beckett site or via the ebooks online on the library. And it could be any of the books that's mentioned on the reading list. So it could be Mullins and Maclean, it could be Buchanan and Huchinski, it could be Martin and Fellens, or it could be another organisational behaviour textbook that is not on that reading list, because the list isn't exhaustive and there are lots of books out there that will offer that information. There's now some time set aside in class to talk about the topics that we've covered today, and also to answer any outstanding questions that you may have prior to next week's session. This final slide contains the references for the first week's slides. You can access all of those resources via the library online or via the reading list on the My Beckett module site.